What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going over the best build for Monk for starters because it's going to give you it via the Hatred's Gift. It's going to be the Patterns of Justice Monk. So it basically comes down to a Tempest Rush build. It's very similar if you've played any Whirlwind build like a Barbarian or even like the God DH where you're kind of just holding down one button and clearing up content. Now the reason why it's going to be one of the best builds in the most recent season, Season 28, is because it got a massive buff for starters. So I mentioned starters because basically everyone's going to be running this in the very beginning, the first like week or so. Everyone is playing this build because it's given to you from the Hatred's Gift. But this is just the patch notes over here. The big change is just 5,000% more damage. So that's the bonus that you get with this build. So let's go over the build, and what you're going to be required to actually play this build is basically going to be the 6 piece of the Patterns of Justice. If you want to earlier along, if you do get the Shenlong's Fist like I have over here in the gameplay earlier on, feel free to use that as well. But getting some of these items can take a little bit of time to get them, of course, ancient and to get the right rolls. Specifically the Wong Kim Lao. This thing is just the worst thing to try to get to roll because it requires so many things to just go right in your favor because you need lots of cooldown reduction in this build. Now I do also want to mention, if you really want to try to push with this build earlier on, sure, you can try to do so by getting a cooldown reduction via the potion legendary power in Season 28, but the thing is that that's random. It's basically like a 1 out of 6 chance if you get it, but it does let you just not get cooldown reduction on a lot of your pieces of gear, and that's what some people opted to do. Or what you can do to make it very consistent is just get yourself an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. This will really help out with cooldown reduction in the very beginning, as the build doesn't really function as well as it should if you don't meet the requirements for it. So, starting right off, let's go over how the game actually is played with this build, and we'll explain all the passives and all the stuff for the build. So, starting right off, first skill, Epiphany. Desert Shroud. You activate it and it just gives you damage reduction and it just gives you extra resource. Really nice to have. You just keep it up as much as you can. It's kind of like Vengeance or Wrath of the Berserker. It's like your uber skill. And then next up we have Tempest Rush. We want to run the Cold Rune. That's going to be our main source of damage here. How it works, it's going to build up stacks. You'll see these numbers build up, and then eventually when you release it, it's going to deal a massive amount of damage. What you want to try to do is time this with your convention of elements if you want to try to push with the build. It isn't technically the best pushing build, but it's going to be the best starter build for Season 28, so that's why everyone's playing it right now. Next up, Sweeping Wind. Basically just activate it. It kind of refreshes itself once you land a crit. Just make sure it's always active at all times, but you only really need to push it once unless the monsters aren't there. Then you may have to reactivate it from going from maybe floor 1 to 2 when there's just a brief like 5-10 seconds when there's no enemies. It doesn't matter the rune that you choose because with the Patterns of Justice, it's just going to give you every rune anyway. So pick the whatever rune that you want. Doesn't really matter here. Next up, Mantra of Salvation. You want the one that is going to increase your dodge chance. So that's the one we're running. And then we want Serenity Ascension just so we can survive as long as possible. Basically, if you want to collect some orbs and there's an explosion or if there's a monster that you need to deal with, activate this if there's some sort of AoE in the ground and you don't maybe want to drop your Squirt's necklace stacks. So that's going to be for that. And then Blinding Flash. You actually need to blind the enemies with this build. You're going to be running Faith in the Light, so you extra bonus damage on top of getting more damage. So Blinding Flash is kind of activated once you see a enemy that you're trying to kill. Remember, if you are doing Convention of Elements, you want to time this on the right rotation once it's ready. As far as the passives go, that's basically on every single build on the leaderboard right now. Guardian's Path, extra block chance, also increases your spirit generation. Beacon Eater for more cooldown. You can drop this though if you want to. Again, there are some people out there like when I hit my rank 2 Demon Hunter build, I had no cooldown reduction. I relied on getting the 1 out of 6 chance and I just kept on rolling rifts until I got the potion activation. That's how some people are doing it with no cooldown, if you're wondering. Next up, Seize Initiative just gives you extra attack speed, and then Harmony for extra survivability. Now, inside of the cube, we're running the balance, so when our Tempest Rush deals damage, it's going to be increased by 600%, and when we hit 3 or fewer enemies, it's going to gain 100% crit chance, so that's really good for bosses. And then Mantle of Channeling, since we're going to be consistently channeling, you're going to be wanting this, gives you more damage and damage reduction. Next up, Royal Ring of Grandeur is thrown in your cube, or technically you can equip it if you want to, because Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac usually rolls with like resource cost reduction, so if you get a socket in that, hey, feel free to swap things in and out. As far as the pieces of gear, the important things to mention, Wong Kim Lao, like I said, this is the priority one that's the hardest thing to roll. If you're crafting a primal, crafted on this. Hopefully you get good rolls, but it's because you can get increased lightning damage on the item, and you may not actually want that, depending on your build. There is a lightning build. I won't talk too much about it because cold is basically the go-to for almost every build, which is what you want it on Azurath. But the Wokim Lao over here, you definitely want to have cooldown reduction. This item over here can be the pig sticker. This one always rolls with bonus cold damage. That's why everyone has it equipped, but this is a lot more consistent to roll than the Wokim Lao. Like I said, and I've already mentioned several times, this thing is difficult to get everything to roll that you want on it. You want to try to get cooldown reduction if you want to go for it, but again, I already mentioned the alternate strategy where you just basically don't get cooldown reduction and you just opt to roll it on the potion if you want to go for pushing. Everything's pretty much the same in most Diablo builds. In the weapons, you want the emeralds, and in the other slots, you want diamonds. Cooldown reduction in the helm, and then extra survivability inside of the chest as well as the pants. But if you want more damage, emeralds are going to be your go-to. We're also going to be rocking the Captain Crimson set bonus. So 2 pieces of Captain Crimsons because we got the Royal Ring of Grandeur inside of the cube. So we're going to get the 3-piece set bonus, so more cooldown reduction and more damage with extra cooldown reduction. So that's why you want extra cooldown reduction. But again, I already mentioned before, you can opt to go for the other potion route. The bonus damage though that you want to get is going to be inside of your boots as well as in your helmet. It's kind of like a generic Diablo build, so you want crit hit chance, crit hit damage, area damage. Those are all great for this build. Attack speed, kind of optional because it will reduce your resource, and in between sometimes it can become a problem when you're out of resource for this build. So yeah, crit chance, crit damage, area damage, cooldown reduction if you want to, go for it. And we're running Convention of Elements as well as Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. Alternatively, right now the rank 1 player is playing with Unity, but keep in mind, you can run what you want to. You could also throw in a Stone of Jordan. So that's why the Wokim Lao has the lightning damage, and you can benefit off of having the Stone of Jordan because it makes it so all of your elemental damage bonus is equal to the highest static bonus. As far as the legendary gems, you're going to have to run Teguk because it is a channeling build. You just hold down the button and keep on going. And then we are running the Bane of the Trapped as well as Bane of the Stricken if you want to go for pushes. And also an important thing to mention is Caesar's Memento. So these are a pair of bracers. You want it so you have the elemental damage on it, crit hit chance as well, but also on the secondary, the enemies taking increased damage from your Tempest Rush for 5 seconds after you hit them with a blind, freeze, or stun. So basically, you activate your blind here. There's actually a few different builds, and I'll link both of them down below. But you want to have Caesar's Memento because once they are blind, they take a huge amount of extra damage. So that's how you get your huge bonus pops. And you want to try to time this with, of course, your Convention of Elements cycle, as well as getting those Squirts Necklace stacks up. So you sometimes can run around the boss in circles. You let go of the button once you build up all the stacks, timing it with Convention of Elements. And if you're playing with the build with the Shenlongs, then you have another thing to time. There's a lot of timing that goes on with this build if you really want to try to push for it, but most people are just like, it's the best build early on. Let me go slam out a couple GR100s, get my gear, and then run maybe Wave of Light or other variants. But I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys all the tips and tricks to get it as best as you can possibly get it, but it is definitely the best build at the start. So yeah, Captain Crimson's, then we've got the Patterns of Justice, again, the 6-piece bonus. Now, there are some variations of this. If you want to go for a speed build, because this build is actually quite fast, you can throw in fleet-footed if you're just doing like, you know, speed. I think I'm doing speed like equivalent of T16, which is like 75s here. So fleet-footed is an option. You can drop your Mantle of Channeling, throw in the Nemesis Bracers, and just kind of go a little bit faster if you're looking to just kind of clear out content. Just doing like T16, just trying to get your keys, then yeah, Stone of Jordan can be excellent because you don't have to time anything with that, and then you don't have to roll off the lightning damage to something else with the Wokim Lao, so that can be an option for you. As far as the passive goes, there's not really anything that you can really change too much. These are basically like set in stone. Well, these ones are the set in stone ones for the monk. Again, this one is just giving you extra 10% movement speed so you can be even faster, but that pretty much wraps up the build in terms of what you need to get your gear running and to where you can just start doing speed content. But yeah, it's a very easy build to play. Just hold down your Tempest Rush and go around and just kind of make sure things are active. And I do want to also mention there is another way where you can play with Cyclone Strike with Wall of Wind, where it can freeze all the enemies if you want to, because this technically freezes the enemies, and that will activate your Caesar's Memento as well. But most people opt to not play it, as it's a little bit harder to maintain, because then you have to work on maintaining your Scorched Necklace stacks a little bit more, and that's 100% increased damage versus the freeze. I mean, you can activate this when you need to, and you have to rotate it on Conventional Elements anyways if you want to min-max in damage. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here and you do want to see more Diablo content in the future, hit subscribe from the bell, because we got the Diablo 4 beta very, very soon. Take care, and check out some more Diablo videos in the pinned comments, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.